everyone, my name is Caitlin and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if it's your first time here. Today I am super excited to be doing a series spotlight of one of my all-time favorite series, and that is the River of Time series by Lisa T. Bergren. Yeah, I have been a fan of this series since the original 3 books released in 2011. So yeah, it's actually kind of a funny story of how I found this series. So after I got obsessed with Twilight in 2009, I was looking for another series. I was still reading YA at the time. I still didn't really know Christian fiction was a thing yet. And I was looking for another series that could give me like the same heart feels as Twilight had. So I was looking on a website called, I think it was called like teenreads.com or something like that, trying to see if I could find something that interested me and that I knew would be clean. And it just so happened that Waterfall, the first book in the River of Time series, which I'll put the cover up here because I don't have that one physically. It just so happened that an ad popped up with that book on it. It had just released at the time, and so this ad popped up with that book cover and the tagline, "Every girl wants a guy who will fight for her honor." And I was like, ooh, okay, that sounds really good. So I was making a list of books that I was interested in to look up later. Didn't know anything. I did not know anything about Lisa T. Bergren. I was not familiar with the name. I knew nothing about it whatsoever. Then, like a couple of months later, I actually hadn't written that one down. I don't know why, but I hadn't written that one down. For whatever reason, I failed to do that. But that's title and author name stuck in my brain. So then a few months later, I was looking for something to read, and I remembered that title, and I went online to Amazon, I believe, and looked it up, and then discovered it was actually Christian fiction. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is meant to be. So I bought it on my Kindle and read it. It was July of 2011. I devoured it in just a few days, and I have been a fan ever since. I got Cascade, the second book in the series, for my birthday that year in the beginning of August, and then the third book, Torrent, was coming out in September. And that was the first book that I ever pre-ordered on Amazon, was Torrent, book 3. You'll see when we get to it. So basically, the storyline is, it begins in Waterfall, and this is technically YA, but I really think that anyone could enjoy it. Anyone of any age, really. Yeah, I would definitely say 15, 16 would be a good starting age. But if you have kids younger than that, read it first and then decide if, because I'll get into some of the content stuff as we go along. But yeah, so it's these two sisters, Gabby and Leah, Gabriella and Evangelia. Gabby is 17, Leah is 15, and their parents their dad was, their mom is an archaeologist, and they specialize in, I don't know, is it Etruscan, whatever it is, that period in history. And their family is Italian, but they live in Colorado. So the book starts out, Waterfall starts out with Gabby and Leah and their mom are in Tuscany, and it's contemporary. It starts out contemporary. And they find this farmer takes them to find this tomb that he has discovered. And their mom gets really excited about it. And that's where it starts out. And then there ends up being some time travel that takes place within that tomb, and they end up going to medieval Tuscany. And there's some pretty great characters, some pretty swoon-worthy knights that we're introduced to, and lots of battles. So there is lots of action. There's on-page character deaths, there's blood, there's violence, as you would expect from a series like that. Now, I will say, if you don't like time travel, there is not much time travel in this book. It's the kind of time travel where like they go there at the beginning of the book and they're there for the rest of the book. I won't tell you what happens at the end of the book because that would be spoilers, though I will say book 1 and book 2 both end on cliffhangers to keep you reading. So just say that. But it's not the kind of time travel where they're time traveling back and forth, left and right, willy-nilly. It's not like that. They time travel to the past and then they're there. They're in the past. So it's basically medieval in that sense. And it is just so good. It's so good. I love it so much. I have so much passion in my heart for this series. I adore it. I really do. It actually is the series that really led me to believe that I could actually write. So I do in a lot of ways attribute my first story that I ever published, Surrender Falls, to this series. This is contemporary. It's not medieval. It's not really fantasy, but there are some like, I guess, fantasy-ish elements to it. I really didn't know what I was doing. Not that I know what I'm doing now, but I really didn't know what I was doing then. But this is like, this series, the River Time series, is what led me to believe that writing was something I could do. And so I definitely credit it for being an encouragement to me to follow my dreams and publish a book. So I did. And I actually, fun fact, there is actually a scene in this book where the characters are reading Waterfall. So I made them fans of the series too. So yeah, a little tribute to the series in this story. Okay, so I kind of gave you the synopsis of Waterfall. Now, I won't give you the synopsis for the following books just because that would be spoilers, obviously, but I will show them to you. Now, I do also want to say that Lisa has just recently gotten the rights back to these books, so she is going to be republishing them with new covers. The stories themselves will be staying the same, but they will have new covers. So, these are the current covers that I am showing you. So, book 2 is called Cascade. And this one has, the first book, Waterfall, has Gabby on the cover. This one has Leah on the cover, the younger sister. So that's book 2. These are very much loved copies. So they are scuffed and yeah, you can see that the pages are yellowed and yeah, they are very well loved. And then book 3, which is probably my personal favorite, is called Torrent. Yeah, I just love this one so much. Now, I will say, I'm trying to decide if it's a spoiler or not. I don't think so. There is a very, in my opinion, very, very tame, not in any way explicit, not described at all, fade to black scene between a married couple in this book. So that is something to be aware of, and why I would recommend it for like 15, 16 plus. Again, like I said, it's not explicit in any way. It's pretty much completely closed door. There's not anything that I would consider graphic in any way, and I don't consider it to be detailed, but that is in there just to be aware of. Yeah, this one is probably my favorite book. I just love this so much. This one has a guy by the name of Marcello Forelli on the cover. And yeah, he's pretty awesome. Yeah, I can't wait for you guys to meet him because he's pretty cool. So that's book 3. Then there are 2 novellas that are put together in a collection, Born and Tributary, which Born picks up exactly, like in the exact like seconds after Torrent ends. And then Tributary is about 6 months or so after Born. So yeah, so these characters, this guy up here, his name is Rodolfo Greco, and you meet him earlier in the series, and yeah, he's not my favorite character, but there are people who really love him, so I don't want to like sway you or anything. And then this guy is named Luca, and yeah, he's pretty great. He's pretty great too. And then the last book in the series is called Deluge. And so this is book 5, And yeah, I can't tell you anything about it because obviously that would all be spoilers. But yeah, this is essentially the conclusion of Gabby and Leah's story. So yeah, so those are the books. Now, I am very excited to announce that in May, I am going to be hosting a group buddy read of Waterfall. Yes, I am so excited about this because I am excited to reread it yet again, and I am super excited to have anyone who would like to join me. Yeah, so the book is available. It's currently not available right now. I don't know exactly when the new books will be going up, but you can get it from libraries. It is on Hoopla and available through Libby, so there are lots of places to get it, even though it is technically out of print right at this moment. There are lots of places where you can access it, or you may even have it perhaps on your shelves already that's waiting in your TBR. That's what I'm hoping. So yeah. So, and if you can't find it, then let me know and we can postpone it a bit. But at this point in time, if I don't hear that people are having trouble trying to find a copy, I'm planning to host the buddy read in May. And I haven't figured out exactly how I'm going to do it yet. If I'm going to do it just in a post on YouTube or try to do a Discord. I don't know. I'm not good at Discord, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah. So I haven't figured that all out just yet, but I would like to kind of whet your appetite for this story. I would like to read to you the prologue and first chapter of Waterfall to kind of give you a sense of maybe why I love the story so much. Now, it does start out a little bit slow, but just hang in there with me, okay? Okay, so prologue. Now, there are a couple instances of Italian words in here. I will do my best to pronounce them correctly, but don't judge because I do not speak Italian, so please don't judge. Okay, prologue. We paused on our hike, panting and wiping our upper lips as our guide, the old Italian farmer who owned this land, chopped down a small sapling, clearing the overgrown trail. Ecco, vedi, he said, pointing at the ground. See, here. See that? My mom cried, pushing the tree branch back farther, squatting beside a slightly sculpted limestone paver. Not really expecting a response, she spoke more to herself. Or was it Dad's ghost she addressed, then to us? But the hairs on the back of my neck prickled with echoed excitement. Here, too, she said, her blue eyes wide, pointing at another. She followed our guide, tossing her Danish blonde braid over her shoulder, ignoring the brambles scratching at her lean, tanned legs. She never noticed much of anything in such situations. I could fall and break my leg, but it would take a fair amount of screaming for her to turn around and tune in. My sister Leah rolled her blue eyes, so much like Mom's, as if to say, "Oh, brother, here we go again." We'd seen it before. My mother, Dr. Adri Betterini, was on the trail of more Etruscans, the mysterious people who predated the Romans in this region of Italy. Most considered her and my dad to be the preeminent Etruscan scholars in the world. When he died, archaeologists from around the world showed up to pay their respects at the funeral. Sighing, I followed my mom up the trail. If we didn't stay right behind her, this crazy path was likely to spring closed, and the woods would swallow her and the guide up like fairies in the forest. Finding these ruins had become like an obsession to her, some crazy connection to my dad. "'Mon, Leah,' I grumbled over my shoulder. My sister liked these hikes less than I did and tended to fall behind, examining a flower or a particular branch, always planning another sketch in her mind. If I let her, she'd sit down right where she was and draw, as lost and absorbed as our mother became in a dig. "'Wait up, Gabby.' Frowning at her slow pace, I looked back, then forward again. I had a moment of panic as the trees closed in around me. In most parts of Tuscany, the trees were farther apart and older. Grand old oaks and pines dominated more space. Here, the saplings were young, fighting one another in the underbrush for their place in the sun. But then my mom popped into view, climbing a large boulder behind the goat-like farmer. We paused beneath him and looked up. The old man looked back at Mom with a mixture of curiosity and triumph in his eyes. "It is good, no?" he said. My mother seemed to find her voice. Good, she said with a cough. Very good. I could tell by her voice she was really excited, but trying to guard her reaction. She knew better than to let her enthusiasm show in the midst of bargaining for land to excavate. What is it? I asked, a bit put out to not be in on the discovery. What'd they find, Gabby? Leah asked. I don't know. Mom wasn't listening to us, so I picked my way through the remaining brush and then climbed the rock. The old, sturdy farmer reached down to help me, and then my sister up. My mother was already making her way forward through the bramble. The forest thinned here, and bigger trees dotted a field before us. But I knew that was not what had captured my mom's attention. It was the rounded burial mounds, covered in thousands of years of soil and grass, nearly swallowed forever. As we battled our way forward, I glimpsed the remains of an old medieval castle on the next hill. Undoubtedly the remains of a lost lord of Toscana, now barely more than a few standing walls and the slight curve of one tower. My mother ignored it. She had eyes only for her guide and these ancient curved tumuli, like none we'd seen other than a site south of Roma. He led her to the nearest mound and beckoned me and Leah forward. As we got closer, we could see that the top had been opened, like a wax seal on a clay jar. Hurriedly, my mother shrugged off her day pack, her eyes shining in the sun. I did the same, studying her intense expression as her long, elegant fingers found her flashlight and she moved out, leaving her backpack open. Clearly, she thought we'd found the elusive colony, the one Dad had been looking for when he died. I fished for a bottle of water as she gingerly moved forward. These old tombs were inexplicably strong, given that most of them were over a couple thousand years old. But that didn't mean they weren't just as likely to collapse as stand. Gabriella, come help me, Mom said over her shoulder, her eyes focusing on me, really focusing for the first time. I surged into action, just steps behind her. Mom crawled up and over the arc of the structure, which was little more than thigh-high. It was so buried, and then reached back to pull the flashlight from her waistband. I took hold of her belt as she leaned over and then into the hole, her head and torso disappearing as she hung halfway into the old tomb. Mom, I warned, anxious that it wasn't safe. It's okay, Gabs, she called, her voice all muffled and echoey. I held my breath as her body shifted left, but still the old tomb held. Okay, pull me up. We knew as soon as she straightened and we saw her face, but still she announced it. 4th century, she cried, grinning and falling into my arms, reaching out to include Leah. I hadn't felt that much joy from her in months. I didn't want the hug to end. 4th century. She meant BC, as in before Christ. Seriously old. She'd found it, the lost city of the Etruscans. She moved out to take a closer look at the other 11 mounds, and I sat down on a rock beside Leah. Gradually, I felt my smile fade. I looked around and over my shoulder. I wanted to be happy for her. I did. It was her dream, this. But it also meant that my entire summer was now claimed by this place. The middle of nowhere, where the nearest unattached boy appeared to be about 70 years old. Chapter 1. Okay, fast forward. Over the next few weeks, my mom settled in, finding us a lame apartment, probably built in the 1970s, judging by the burnt orange and avocado decor. It was outside Rada in Chianti, which, trust me, was not a happening town. And still a 30-minute drive down stomach-bending roads and a hike into the archaeological site. Did I mention she made me and Leah get up at 5 a.m. every morning to come with her? The only good thing about that was that we gladly hit the pillow early each night, and I was able to dream of better places for a teen to spend her summer. Things progressed on the Tumuli campus, as my mom called it, as expected, with 2 of the old tombs already largely free of the 5 feet of soil that once surrounded them, and all trees and brush cut down and pulled away from the remaining tombs. The rest would be unearthed by volunteers trucked in from Roma and Firenze, as well as American university campuses, in the coming weeks. But my mother had been all excited about getting inside these first 2. The one the farmer had broken into, Tomb 2, and the other, the one she referred to as the mothership. She wouldn't let us near them. Sure, as usual, she was happy enough to hand us a shovel and pail and tell us to get within 6 inches of the structure. But inside, no. She and my dad had always been like that at a dig, worried we'd compromise the site. You practically needed a doctoral degree to enter. until everything was documented from top to bottom, sketched, photographed, videotaped, logged on paper. Then, a couple weeks later, they let the kids in. Basically, I was sick of it. I was 17. I felt ignored, used. Just how much damage could Leah and I do to the place? And I was curious. Had this site really been worth my dad's life? So I was a little bit grumpy when we drove up that morning and tiredly blinked in the pink early morning light. The new dirt road was blocked by 2 uniformed guards and a jeep with the words Archeologica Societa Archeologico dell'Italia emblazoned on the side. Whenever these guys showed up, it inevitably meant delays and trouble for my parents. A man stepped out of the back of the jeep, wearing khaki slacks and a starched white shirt that was rolled at the sleeves, as well as expensive leather shoes. He looked like the slick rival archaeologist in the first Indiana Jones movie. Yeah, my parents loved those old flicks, and my mom reacted the same way Indy had, muttering the man's name like a curse word. Monero. I knew if she could, she'd bang her head against the steering wheel. I glanced over at Leah in the back seat and raised my brows. We hadn't run across Dr. Monero for more than a year. But the last time, well, it wasn't pretty. Dad almost decked him, he was so mad. Could Monero shut her down for good this time? The upshot would be we'd have to go home to Boulder, or at least to Roma or Firenze for a time, but Mom would be seriously bummed. Dr. Vetturini, Dr. Monero said in a thick Italian accent as my mom rolled down the window. Doctor, Mom returned with a nod, her voice even, polite. I've reviewed your documentation in the commune, by commune he meant Siena, and discovered you haven't filed forms 201B and D for this dig, he said, crossing his arms. Imagine you digging around in our paperwork, Mom muttered. She still had a habit of referring to projects as ours, the result of 2 decades of working alongside my dad. I wondered how long that would last. I'd kind of miss it when she stopped. What was that you said? Monero asked, leaning down toward the window opening. I can't imagine we didn't file the right paperwork, Mom amended. We filed over 50 documents. It seems a common problem for you, he said with a thin-lipped smile. Always 1 or 2 missing, it seems. And you appear to have appointed yourself as our personal guard dog, my mom said, losing patience. This isn't about you, Monero said, standing erect again. He gestured behind himself. I guard Italia's treasures. That is my only goal. My mom looked up at the ceiling of the car as if she wanted to scream. Please, Monero said, I've set up a tent beside your own. Let us discuss what must happen for you to continue your work here. You mean in order for you to horn in on the glory, Mom said. Please, Monero repeated. Let us sit down and discuss this as fellow scholars. I have espresso in a thermos. He smiled, clearly trying to kiss up. Espresso? My mom said, her tone softening. Si. Dr. Monero's slight smile moved across his handsome face. He reached for the door handle and opened it. Sounds inviting on this chilly morning, does it not? Mom ignored his outstretched hand and climbed out on her own, slamming the door. She brushed by him. Dr. Monero hurried to catch up with her. Come on, Leah, let's go see it, I said. See what? She said, frowning as if in a fog. The tomb, I said, eyes wide. We won't get another chance for, what, another month or 2? While they debated, let's go see what the fuss is all about. Leah paused on the other side of the car, door still open, and frowned at me. I dunno. Come on, I said, irritated by her hesitation. What was the risk? If we were going to spend our summer here, we might as well know what the sacrifice was for. I, for one, was going to see it, with her or not. I trudged past the new guards that had arrived with Monero, pretending like I was following my mom, and after a bit glanced back to see that Leah was coming after me. I smiled smugly to myself. I could always get her to do anything, especially if she felt like she was getting left behind. My mind whirled with memories of my parents' hushed, excited conversations, shared in an intimate tone. It had always been an affair of the mind between them, as well as the heart. They'd been connected like no other couple I had ever known. I'd loved it, and hated it. Sure, I was glad that my parents loved each other, but we always felt left out. It was like Mom and Dad were always in the same orbit, Leah and me in some constellation around them, never quite intersecting. I wanted to know what it was like to share the same airspace, even for a moment. And since Dad died, well, it was like Mom wasn't even in our galaxy at all. So I trudged forward, ignoring the questioning glances of a couple of students heading in the opposite direction. The sun was gaining now, cresting the trees in the east, casting long, dusty streams of light across the field, illuminating the tops of wild lavender spiraling upward, and the domes of the tumuli. I ignored my suddenly speeding heartbeat and went directly to the nearest tomb, as if my mother had sent me there on a mission. Leah was right behind. Pausing for a moment at the entrance of the tunnel, I took a deep breath, bent down, and crawled through, glad I had my jeans on. I hoped Mom had left an electric lantern ahead, as she often did on sight. In a moment, I bumped into it and eagerly fumbled for the switch. I was inside Tomb 2. I swung my legs around as the halogen bulb caught and flickered on, casting blue light all around. I gaped at the artwork inside. Mom had gone on and on about it, but her voice had become like a buzzing bee, and I'd tuned her out. The colors were magnificent, some of the best we'd seen, bright, and so many of them. Men and women, black stick figures, depicted feasts, hunts, battles. I lifted the lantern and cruised along one wall and then another, mouth agape, as my sister came through the tunnel. "Gabby, we really shouldn't be here," she said, standing there as if she hadn't already made the decision to join me. "We're here. Aren't you the least bit curious?" "Yes, but you know how Mom is." She brushed her hands against her jeans. She likes to choose when to invite us in. "So we'll act surprised," I said. "Check it out. If this is Tomb 2, what is Tomb 1 like?" I raised the lantern so that we could both better see a family dining at a table, a large roasted bird on a platter before them. "It looks like it's Thanksgiving." "In China, that's a goose." "Nah, not big enough. Probably a pheasant or a quail." "If that's a quail, they grew them big back in Etruscan times." I smiled. "Okay, a pheasant." I moved on down the wall as Leah studied images I'd already taken in. A sound at the tunnel entrance made us both draw in our breath for a moment. But whatever it was moved on, and so did we. I stared at the portrait of a fierce warrior with sword in hand. Dad and I had sparred from time to time. He'd been trained in the art of fencing and made me learn too. I didn't mind much. It had been one way we could spend time together, and now that he was gone, I kinda missed it. But this guy on the wall hefted a much heavier, broader sword than I'd ever picked up. To the right of the warrior there was a moon, a sun, and 2 handprints. "Leah, check this out," I said. She moved over to me and stared. "Ever seen anything like it?" I glanced at her and she shook her head. "Have you?" "No." I handed her the lantern and then lifted my hand to the print. It seemed familiar somehow, like I'd seen it before, even though I knew I hadn't. I heard my sister's sudden intake of breath. Mom would kill me if she found out I was touching anything in here, but it was like I couldn't stop. I was drawn to it. "Mom will ground you for weeks for touching that," Leah hissed as I put my hand on the fresco again. The oils from our skin and ancient paintings were never to meet. It was a cardinal rule in the Betterini workplace. I knew this. Leah knew this. But still, I couldn't resist. "It's a perfect match. Look," I said, nodding toward the handprint. "And what's weirder? It's warm, Leah. Warm." Her angry blue eyes moved from me to the wall in confusion. Stone wasn't warm. It was never warm. Maybe there's a hot spring on the other side. Thought of that, but I don't smell any sulfur, do you? We both took a big whiff of the air. No, just your standard Etruscan tomb with odors of water evaporated on old stone. And it's just the handprint that's warm. This handprint that fits mine. I stepped back and looked again to the pair of prints on the wall. The left fit my hand, but the right was smaller, and was the normal temperature, cool stone I'd come to expect in places like this. "Leah, here, come here." I wrapped my right arm around her so she could edge in closer, directly beside me. "The left print fits my hand, but the right is too small." I glanced from the print to my sister. "You try it." Leah glanced at me and then toward the tomb entrance, down a long corridor to my right. We were both thinking about our mother arguing with Monero in Italian. I doubted the espresso was helping. "They're not coming anytime soon. Go on, try it. It's so weird, touching a handprint from someone who's been dead for a couple of thousand years." I knew before Leah's fingers were settled within the lines that it would fit as surely as the other print had fit mine. "I thought you said this one was cold," Leah said. "I did. It's warm," she said in wonder. "Yours too?" I frowned. "Really?" I leaned in and put my hand on the left again. When I touched it, My voice broke off because something odd was happening. The room was spinning. Slowly, the paintings on the wall stretching as if I was looking at them through funhouse glasses. And the wall was getting warmer. I tried to pull my hand away, but couldn't. "Gabby!" Leah cried. I tried to focus on her, the only thing in the room that seemed static. Her wide blue eyes flashed terror. "It's hot!" I looked up to the Tomb Raider's hole. Up top, I could see trees, which comforted me for a moment, but then I blinked and looked again. 100-year-old oaks were shrinking, rising, like one of those time-lapse cameras set to record 1,000 years. There was no sound. I couldn't even hear Leah any longer. My mind raced, handprints that fit our own, heat where there should be cold, a room spinning faster and faster about us. A tomb built 300 or 400 years before Christ came to earth. Were we... I screamed, but it came out as a mere breath, come and gone as if it had never happened. I glanced up again. The trees outside were rising, shrinking, rising faster than ever before. We had to stop it, had to pull our hands from the wall. It was so hot, my skin felt fused to it, as if it might tear the flesh from my palm if I dared to move. But we had to. Had to. I looked again into my sister's eyes, silently telling her to get ready, since we couldn't speak. I had to put my foot on the wall and yank, so surely was my hand now one with the print. As I wrenched it away, so hard it was like breaking a powerful magnetic connection, I wrapped both arms around my sister and fell to the ground behind us, like a football player sacking the quarterback. Except backward. But as my shoulder met the travertine floor, I knew I didn't have her, after all. My arms were empty. It was dark. I groaned, taking stock, wondering if I'd hit my head, but it felt okay. Even my hand had immediately ceased burning. I blinked in confusion, hoping my vision would clear. "Leah?" I ventured. As soon as I said it, I knew I was alone. My voice echoed around the chamber with nothing but inanimate objects to absorb the sound. Mom's lantern was long gone. Up top, there was no daylight. Had I passed out? Was it now night? Mom's going to be so mad. But I detected other sounds, odd, muffled sounds, the sounds of men crying out. And alarming sounds like horses, metal clanging, men screaming. Had Monero brought in reinforcements? "Mom!" I cried. "Leah!" I had to have hit my head, forgotten. I looked up, willing my eyes to see stars, moonlight, anything, but was met with only darkness. "Hey!" I yelled upward. "Hey, I'm in here!" All I could think was that the Archaeologica Society guys had ordered the tomb resealed and replacing the stone and covering the hole. My mom had lost her temporary jurisdiction over the site and somehow had not noticed that my sister and I were inside, or at least I was, before it was resealed. As for the warm handprint, my sister's disappearance, the time-lapse forest, I had no idea what that was all about. I had to have fainted or something, or picked up some weird bug and was running a fever. Maybe in opening up these tombs we'd awaken some odd virus. That'd be uncool. I reached up to feel my forehead, fully expecting a raging fever, but it didn't feel like it. "Don't panic," I said to myself, feeling my heart race. "Gabriella, get a grip." I'd spent far too many years in and out of Etruscan tombs to be creeped out, and I knew where the entrance was. I knew the way out. I got to my feet and felt my way toward the corridor. "Sorry, Mom," I muttered, knowing that I was now spreading oil from my skin all along the wall. I used my right hand. My shoulder ached from my fall to the ground. I brushed up against a smooth shape and winced as I felt it give way, then crashed to the floor. I'd seen the urns on the way in. 7th century Magna Graecia, Mom said. 4 matched urns. Now 3, miraculously surviving 3 centuries before they were put in this tomb. Somehow, the Tomb Raiders had left them behind. The urns had thrown my mom into an excited frenzy, because she couldn't connect the style of the frescoes with the dating on the urns. "Oh, she's really going to kill me," I said, heartsick, thinking of the coming wrath of my mom when she discovered what I'd done. Never before had I so damaged a site or artifact, even as a little kid. But I'd gladly face her fury rather than be stuck in here. The urn at least helped me know where I was for sure. At the end of the passageway was the curved stone that marked the entrance. I could see the outline of daylight around it as I neared. Only problem, it was plugged with the entrance stone again. And the entrance stones were heavy, maybe 400 pounds. I knelt and ran my fingers around the edge, considering options for removing it, remembering how my dad would pry them away with a crowbar. but always from the outside. I leaned my shoulder against it and pushed. My height and fencing made me stronger than most girls, but the stone barely moved. I paused. There were odd sounds coming from the other side. Men shouting, grunting, the clang of metal again, as if I shoved the thought aside. Impossible. And the main thing I had to focus on right now was escape. "Hey, help! I'm in here! Help!" I shouted so loudly it made my throat hurt. I could hear the pause in whatever metalwork was happening. "Mom?" "Leah, help! Help me!" I screamed again, but then the sounds resumed. "Oh, brother," I muttered. I maneuvered in the tunnel until my back and shoulders were against one side and at an angle. I could press my feet against the stone. I pushed so hard that my butt lifted from the ground. I grunted, willing that stupid rock to move, move. And then it did, scraping, groaning, then falling away to the dirt outside with a big thump. My eyes narrowed and I cautiously peered outward. There appeared to be some sort of Renaissance fair battle scene reenactment going on. How'd all these men get here? And why here? Perhaps some protest by the local Sienese bent on reclaiming this land? Monero's doing? It figured, now that they knew it held the treasures it did. But then I saw a man block another man's sword strike with his own, then plunge a dagger into him with his other hand. I gasped, too surprised to scream. The injured man fell to his knees, clutching the hilt of the knife, his mouth agape. Blood spread across his white shirt in a slowly seeping circle. No Renaissance fair I'd seen had had special effects like that. With growing horror, I glanced to my right, where another man was writhing on the ground, groaning. My hand came to my mouth. His belly had been split open, and some of his intestines were bulging out. Blood spread across the ground in a wide pool. It was real. I was in the middle of a real battle. Suddenly, I could smell the stink of sweat and coppery blood all around me. Men were wounded or dying. Others seemed dead set on bringing the rest to the end of their lives. I glanced left and saw that one wasn't battling any longer. Instead, he stared at me, as if I were a female Lazarus emerging from the tomb in my grave clothes. I wanted to look away from him, but I couldn't. He was the most handsome guy I'd ever seen, with a model's physique and a face to match. Big, chocolate brown eyes, square jaw, aristocratic nose, pronounced cheekbones, a serious haughty. I'd never encountered such Italian hotness outside of Roma, and he was certainly the first man I'd seen holding a real sword and in full-on night gear, tunic, tights, breastplate, the whole enchilada. Somehow he made the look work. It was then that I noticed the young man behind him, equal in height but a little narrower at the shoulders. His eyes were hard, shifting from me to the man before him. He raised his sword as if to strike. "Look out!" I screamed. The first man frowned, and then, as if remembering where he was, turned, pulling his heavy sword from the ground and heaving it in an arc around to parry the other man's strike. My mind immediately moved from the silly explanation I had come to, that this was some sort of Renaissance fair battle reenactment, to again attempt to absorb the truth. These men were fighting to the death. Why? Just what was going on? The question died in my mind as I caught sight of that castle in the distance, the one on the next hill that had been such a disaster when I'd first sighted it. It was no longer in ruins. The walls were erect, the tower intact. Crimson red flags waved from the battlements in designs that matched the second knight's coat of arms, visible on his shield as he raised it to deflect the first knight's repeated blows. My eyes went back to the castle. It was as if I'd traveled back in time. Impossible! I was dreaming. I had to wake up. Wake up, Gabby, wake up! I pinched myself and shook my head, slapped my cheeks, but the two small armies were still before me, and that castle hadn't changed a bit. Those two guys, princes from the castle or what? Fighting for what reason? My hand went to my head as I struggled to remember what little I knew of medieval history. We'd covered a bit last year in school, and my parents had always tried to plant kernels in our minds, hoping they'd somehow grow up into some harvest of historical knowledge. But what I really knew was Etruscan history, culture. Anything in the last couple of thousand years was still pretty fuzzy in my head. The Crimson Knight whistled and shouted at two men nearby, gesturing toward me. The Hot Knight glanced over his shoulder and frowned, then shouted at his own men. Suddenly, 6 knights were in a dead run, all heading in my direction. But when they met, they began to fight one another. My heart pounded, and I turned, intending to escape into the forest behind me. But there was another knight. By the color of his tunic, I could tell he was from the scarlet-flagged castle, steadily approaching me. He must have sneaked around the tomb, intending to surprise me. He rose from his crouch and smiled as if this were some game, capturing me. I could hear the fighting continue behind me, a shout, a cry, as if another had been wounded. The knight was coming closer. I retreated until my back hit up against the curved wall. I fought for an idea, an escape route out of this terrible nightmare. Madly, I thought about dashing back into the tomb, but he'd be on me in a second. This was no dream. My attacker was real, leering, scanning my body as if he had never seen a girl in pants. I paused. Maybe he hadn't. Suddenly, I was aware of my skinny jeans and my cami top, barely covered by a thin cardigan that reached my elbows. He laughed, lowly, and was now close enough for me to see he had green eyes and really bad teeth. He lifted his sword tip, studying me as it reached my throat. There was no rounded nub, as with the fencing swords my father and I used. This was broad, and so sharp I feared he would actually cut me. I stayed as still as possible, but it was hard. I was shaking pretty badly. He asked me something in Italian, but in a dialect that made me pause for a moment. Slowly my mind translated. "Are you a witch?" A witch?" I returned in Italian, frowning. "A witch," he repeated. "I saw you come out of there, and your clothing." He moved forward, changing the sword from tip to side at my throat, in order to keep me in place and allow him closer. He reached a hand up to my hair. "Your hair. No one allows their womenfolk to parade around as such. Are you a witch, or are you a Norman?" He spit out Norman as if it were a foul word, referring to the French to the north. "I am no witch. I am from..." I clamped my lips shut. He wouldn't believe me if I told him. "Look, you big jerk," I said in English, finding strength in my frustration. "You don't want to know where I've come from. It'd freak you out. It's freaking me out." He leaned back, as if surprised by my anger and confused by my odd language. But then he turned, sensing the man stealthily approaching him from behind. I tried to distract him, had been moderately successful, but these men were trained soldiers. That was clear enough. He met the knight's heavy strike, barely deflecting it from slicing his head like a melon. I had to get out of here. A hand clenched my forearm, and I let out a yelp, but then quickly swallowed it. It was the first knight in gold that I had seen, even more handsome up close, but his eyes were no longer soft in wonder. They were hard, staring down at me in consternation. "Venga," he said gruffly in Italian. "Come." I looked across the field and saw the Crimson Knight, wounded, his arms draped around two of his men. He glared at me and the knight beside me, then shouted. The man, my attacker, immediately broke from the other Golden Knight and retreated to join his comrades. My protector's knights let him pass, unhindered, other than sending him verbal taunts. The battle was over for some reason. The others mounted their horses, all draped in scarlet, gave us long looks, and then rode away. I looked to the men who now surrounded me, staring at me. Suddenly I felt weak-kneed. I was now under the protection, or was I the prisoner, of the dudes from the Gold Castle. "I hope you're the good guys," I muttered. And that is the end of chapter 1. I hope that you enjoyed that, and I really hope that you will join in the buddy read. Let me know if you plan to join in down below. Let me know if you've read this series before, if it's one of your favorites as well, or if I have intrigued you to pick it up. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.